Hi, Donovan. Good evening. It's amazing to see you and for you to take the time to do this interview with us, talking about Kilimanjaro and everything surrounding that. So yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So our first question generally is, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and where your interest for hiking came from?
Yeah, so my name is Donovan. I live on the west coast of the United States in the state of Oregon. I own an adventure travel company called Embark. We do adventure treks around the world, but I actually started on Mount Kilimanjaro more than 20 years ago. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, so I own this company and we now do adventures around the world, classic adventures, Everest Base Camp, Machu Picchu, but we've also evolved into Bhutan, Jordan, Guatemala, and things like that. So we do about 300 to 500 people's adventures per year on different treks and mountains.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And where did your passion start with the adventures and hiking and trekking?
Yeah. So the state of Oregon has the Cascade Mountain Range, which runs from the Pacific Crest Trail, runs from Canada all the way down to Mexico. It is a state with many mountains, lots of trails, easy to hike. So it kind of evolved from there. I used to work in the rafting industry, and my father was a big rafter. So when I was in my teens, we would go on 50-mile, 100-mile rafting trips. And then I started bringing friends and I realized that I could organize it myself. And then it kept evolving. Then I got out to start seeing the world. I started, backpacking around the world and things like that. So it tied the adventure into logistics with travels and trails and things like that. So it kind of evolved from my childhood.
Nice. And how did you then eventually end up in Africa?
Yeah, well, this is kind of a long story. I'll break it up and make it reasonable. So, in about 1999, maybe 2000, I decided to do a 6-month backpacking trip. Came back and got some friends and said, let's go across Europe. Let's go North Africa. Let's go to a little bit of Middle East and let's fly down to Tanzania, right? Picked a country we'd kind of heard of, had no idea about it. So back in the 2000s, you could go and get on these little chat rooms online and different people would join. And I met this guy who said that he lived in Tanzania. Now, we developed a relationship over time. And I said, hey, in 9 months, I'm going to be over there in Tanzania. Would love to see you. Would love to meet you. And that's it. And so we went on this backpacking trip. And by the 6th month, we were flying down to Tanzania. I messaged this gentleman who actually came to pick us up at the airport. And his name was Chris Kasanga. And we were in the city of Dar es Salaam, which is on the coast. And he said, my father is a pastor and has a church up on Kilimanjaro at 6,000 feet. And we were like, well, we'd like to see Kilimanjaro. It's iconic, right? So let's go there. So we went to see Kilimanjaro. We went up to meet his father. He showed us around in these gorgeous villages. And he happened to know of this house that was further for rent up the mountain, right? And he's like, oh, this is this big empty house that's been here for years. And he showed it to me and he said, like, can I take some pictures of you guys next to it? And we did that. And then we spent a month in Tanzania and we left. Well, I decided to bring him back to America. I was like, let's bring him back to America. Like, let's let him taste the United States a little bit. So I did some fundraising. I brought him back. And then after he was here in the United States for a while, I had met this girl who is now my wife. And I had told her, I was like, I know a house we could go rent on Kilimanjaro. And she said, and I was trying to be cool. And she said, let's go. She said, let's go. And I was like, okay, right. And so we moved together, having only been dating for 6 months, to Mount Kilimanjaro. And we moved into a house that we rented up on the mountain. We had no plans. We were just going to stay there for a year. And then we ran out of money. And we decided, let's turn this into a guest house. Let's find backpackers that are backpacking across Africa and Tanzania, turn this into a guest house. Well, that evolved into a guest house. It also evolved into something bigger, which we'll want to talk about, which is the Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project. And basically, at a time, they were trying to help the porters in Kilimanjaro get organized, be treated fairly. right? And I ended up launching that program there on Kilimanjaro for an organization. So I started that project there. However, so continue on. We built this guest house. We were up there for 2 years. So we lived at 6,000 feet on Mount Kilimanjaro for 2 years. We moved there during the rainy season, which is April and May. So we went immediately into the languages, learned how to say like, where can I buy an onion? Or I'd like to buy some eggs, please. And my wife loves languages. So we jumped into Swahili, and then we got into mountain climbing piece of it as well. So we started, in the back of our house, we built what's called a nyumba ya makuti in Swahili. That means a house of thatch. And so we built a thatch, big outdoor covered thatch area in a beautiful jungle, tons of banana trees, really, really green and lush, lots of little trails going every direction, no tourists, nothing up on this side of Kilimanjaro. So we started that. And here I am, like 20 years later, and I run a big Kilimanjaro trekking, climbing company, but it evolved from there. So we were there for 2 years. We started organizing treks and came back to the United States and realized in order to organize Kilimanjaro treks, you actually have to mostly be in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. So I also started the first Frisbee golf course on Mount Kilimanjaro. So people would come up there and be like, well, what's there to do on Kilimanjaro? And like, yeah, we can go look around here and do this and hike around there. Like, I was like, but let's make a Frisbee golf course. So we built a Frisbee golf course that went all through the village, and we get everyone up there and we'd be throwing Frisbees, and people loved it. And then what happened was travelers who were traveling, there's a kind of a travel circuit from Kenya to South Africa that a lot of people do, about 7 countries. People were traveling. This Dutch guy was traveling, and he was our first guest, and he was going south to South Africa, and everyone he met, he's like, go to Donovan Carey's house, go to Donovan's Carey's house. So we started getting all these calls, and we built a guest house in Kilimanjaro. And I was just there actually in March looking at it, and I wish I was still there.
We're still there. Yeah. That sounds like a really cool story.
Amazing adventure.
It was fun. But I was young and idealistic and so many things. And there was lots of growing pains with, living in a different culture, starting the Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project. So here I am coming in and saying, hey, all you Tanzanians who have climbing companies, here's how you have to do your work now. That was hard, and that it didn't fail for a long time. So, but what was happening was basically Porters on Kilimanjaro in the early 2000s, late 90s, it was just still evolving into this track. Porters were, not going up the mountain adequately clothed, right? They weren't sleeping in tents, weren't being fed, right? Carrying too much weight. So all of these things started with this project to basically, which is still wildly successful in there today. It's still being run successful. And so these rules had to be put in place. And so I helped kind of launch it there for 2 years. Yeah, it was fun. So we had a closed lending program where basically if you're a porter, you want to go up the mountain, you would come and get boots, you would come and get trekking pants, you'd come and get gear, hats, gloves, and we started a closed lending program. And how we got those clothes, because you don't have any of those clothes are produced, is what we did is we partnered with ski resorts that are in the United States that usually after 2 years, they change out their gear. Yeah. So we get tons and tons of gear. We actually got a bunch of it donated onto planes, and then we'd pick it up in Nairobi and bring it back there. So we had a huge project for that. It evolved into other things as well. Educational classes for porters on all sorts of different things. But that launched my career into everything Kilimanjaro. Yeah.
It's really great if you can be so open-minded and maybe a bit naive in the initial stages, right? When you just move there and like, oh, we're running out of money. What do we do? And then, we ran out of money. We had we started our first night. It was like, okay, we have these extra rooms. Let's charge like $8 a night. So we started getting these people coming in, and then we realized like my wife likes to make food. So we realized you actually make more selling food. And she had the Peace Corps cookbook. The Peace Corps cookbook in 2000 was like, how to make pad thai. We didn't have all these things that you have these luxuries to today. So she'd make these things.
And then we kind of built this thing up, and then climbers started coming, and yeah, it was great. It was magical. I love Kilimanjaro. I love being there. I wish I could be there all the time.
Yeah.
Are you still regularly traveling back to Kilimanjaro?
Yeah. I was there in March with a group. We took 24 kidney donors to the top of Kilimanjaro for National Kidney Donor Day. So I usually go there for 1 or 2 months per year, but lots of people that we work with like to get on the phone and have conversations like this about Kilimanjaro, so it's easier to sell trips to Kilimanjaro when I'm here. But I'm also in lots of other parts of the world too on tracks. I was on Kilimanjaro in March. I was in Everest Base Camp in April. I was in June and July in Peru, Salcantay trek, which you guys have, and some other treks up in northern Peru. And then I'm in Aconcagua in February, and my wife, who's also in the business, just returned from Oaxaca in Colorado. So yes, and we have kids too. So it's all in the mix. Yeah.
A lot of juggling.
Yeah. So.
Well, what would be the main attraction to you after all these years still for Mount Kilimanjaro? What is that special thing that makes it so dear to you?
You know, that's a good question. So Kilimanjaro is what we like to say everyone's Everest, right? So lots of average people with some to none climbing experience, right, go to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, okay? And a lot of those groups, to be honest, tend to be people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, early 70s. And it ends up being a once in a lifetime experience, right? Most people are never climbed to 19,341 feet. It's iconic, it's magical, but what really, really makes Kilimanjaro different from lots of other places is the culture of the people. Hands down, culture of the people. When do you get to go on a trek and there's 20 or other 30 porters, guides that are all very interested in you, nice people. The culture of Kilimanjaro takes it up a notch. Now, if you go to somewhere and do like the Everest Base Camp trek, Sherpa people are nice, but in general, Sherpa people tend to be a little bit more reserved and quieter. They're not like singing and dancing and doing all these things. It's just different. So the culture of Kilimanjaro is what attracts people to it. And that's what people like about that. So they have the magic of the people, the iconic mountain that you've seen all kind of growing up, right? Hakuna Matata, which means no problem, right? And then they have something that's just enough to be the hardest thing that they've ever done in their life, are pretty close. So what I always tell people is Kilimanjaro is a series of day hikes followed by the hardest hike you'll do in your life, which is a 12 to 16 hour hike after you've done 6 days of day hikes. It's what getting to the base camp of Kilimanjaro is very reasonable for average people. But then to do a 14-hour hike in the middle of the night, half the oxygen you have at sea level, right? You put that all together, it's mental. They get up there, it's a blur, it's crazy. But when they come back down, and usually when they come back, they say, Donovan, that is the most amazing thing I've ever done in my life besides see my child born, get married. You know what I mean? Like it ranks up there always. Now, the problem is they come back to embark a year or two later and like, well, we want to go to Everest Base Camp. And I'm like, oh, it's great track. Here's how you go and here's where you stay. But, it's the culture's different, so it's different. It's still a once in a lifetime adventure. Kilimanjaro is like that. We have like people coming back for like 3rd trips, 4th trips every 2 or 3 years, switch it up, different route, do the northern circuit, maybe do the western breach, different pieces of Kilimanjaro. But most people do the Lemosho Route, which is the route that you guys have the itinerary, or not the itinerary, but the map that you guys have, which is a great, wonderful map. And if you look at lots of Kilimanjaro maps, and I brought one, not many of them are that good. This is the best one that you can buy locally, but yours is the best one you can buy online. I absolutely love it. In fact, you should have put one up there today. You should have put that one up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, I was just rambling there all about Kilimanjaro, but yeah.
No, it's amazing to listen to. Absolutely.
Yeah.
When was the first time that can you still remember your first time when you climbed to the top?
Yeah. For a number of years, I went up and down and I didn't always go to the summit. But my first adventure, which is absolutely crazy, is we took 30 people, which you never do in Kilimanjaro. I mean, it's pretty rare, and 110 porters. So do the math on that. That's 140 people eating, going to the bathroom, carrying the gear. It was crazy. And it happened to be for a New Year's summit. So we're going to summit on New Year's, watch the sunrise over Africa on New Year's. But a New Year's summit is what lots and lots of people want to do in lots of that context. So that was a crazy adventure on Kilimanjaro. That was my second biggest, happened to be 20 years later, is this last March when I took the kidney donors for National Kidney Donor Day. But yeah, so it's still magical to this day. It's still different. I've been up it a ton of times, more than I can count, but it's still, the summit night and getting to the top is really, really fascinating, because the top, so you think about Kilimanjaro, it's 3 degrees south of the equator. Okay. So it's an equatorial mountain and it has glaciers on it, right? Yeah. One of those glaciers, which happens to be near the ridge, is the most amazing glacier. It ranks near like glaciers in Patagonia. It's an incredible, for 1 hour, you're walking at 19,000 feet. The glacier is right next to you, down 15 minutes as you walk all the way to watch the sunrise over Africa. And then looking down actually into the ash pit and looking down into the rest of Kilimanjaro, it stretches forever. And you just wish you could take the time to explore all of it.
Yeah.
Most people don't know. And I do this I do this talk maybe once or twice a month. It's called Secrets of Kilimanjaro, right? And I go into some of the secrets that people don't know. So you just spent 7 or 8 hours getting to the summit, right? But you're actually, on average, the most people spend at the summit is about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. So you just got up at 11:30, you started hiking at midnight. 7:30 or 8 o'clock, you're getting up there and you're there for 4 minutes. It depends upon the weather. Now I've been up there for an hour and a half, but most of the time it's about 4 or 5 minutes, which is crazy. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you did mention that there's many routes, or few different routes going up to the top.
Yeah.
Then people come back to do other ones. So there's a different grade. So some are easier than others. What tends to make the easier ones easier and the harder ones harder? Is it?
Yeah. So most of them are actually easy. When I say easy, it's still going to take you 5 or 6 days to get to the top. Most of them are like that. The trick to climbing Kilimanjaro is taking your time, right? 19,341 feet. You have to acclimatize. Everything is about acclimatization, right? So, you have the Lemosho Route, which comes across the sheer plateau. You have the Machame Route, which comes from the south side. You have the Marangu Route, which comes from the east. And then you have the Rungai in the north. They're all very reasonable to climb in that sense. The trick is are you going to try to do it too fast? Because it's expensive, right? The permit on Kilimanjaro is ridiculously expensive. It's $1,200 for 8 days per person, the permit that's paid. So it's expensive. So people want to do it fast and try to do it, but you have to take your time. That's the successful way to do it. Now, if you're a mountaineer and you're a true mountaineer and you've actually climbed mountaineering type mountains, then you do what's called the Western Breach. And the Western Breach is the coolest way to climb Kilimanjaro, because what it does still has the 3,000 feet in the middle of the night, but it pops you into the crater of Kilimanjaro, right? All the climbs, the Rungai, Machame, Marangu, Lemosho, they'll bring you up onto the ridge of Kilimanjaro. The crater of Kilimanjaro is when you get to walk across the crater, you have the northern glaciers, you have an ash pit, and then you get to come up the back way to Kilimanjaro, right? So it's a very, very cool way. That's a Western Breach. If it were any steeper, and this is only for 3,000 feet, you would be roped up, but it is not steep enough to be roped up at. So it's right at the edge of it. We do wear helmets. We do carry an ice axe for if we have to build stairs. and things like that. But the Western Breach is kind of the mountaineering one, and only a handful of companies like Embark do that route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the success rate, we had a look online. It says that it's pretty high, like 90% for 8 days.
Correct.
What do you say is generally the factor for people not to reach the top 10, those 10%? What sets them apart?
So the number one, so there's a couple things. So in Swahili, we like to say pole pole, which means slow, slow. So you know, people show up, they've been training, they're ready. It's like, all right, we're gonna trek, you know, like, no, you go slow, and they set the pace slow. So slow is the way to start it. Second is you got to take your time. If you try to do the Marangu Route in 5 days, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's your body's not going to adjust. But the main reason that I truly feel that people get to the top of Kilimanjaro is they do an 8-day trip, but they also hydrate. And I'm talking like 3, 4, maybe 5 liters of water per day. There's a relationship between altitude and hydration, right? And so it's easy to get dehydrated. And if the more water you tend to put into you, the better it seems like the probability of you getting to the summit. So that seems to be the biggest one. Or you're out of shape. So we took 50 people in March collectively over a month. 45 of those people made it. Out of the 5 that didn't make it, 2 were out of shape. Okay, like they just physically couldn't do it.
Yeah.
2 had altitude issues. You have altitude issues at 15, 16,000 feet. That's fine. And then 1 was just scared. And so in general, on an 8-day trip, I feel like as you drop a day here or drop a day there, your success rate drops maybe 15 to 20%. You will still see people that try to do it in 6 days. And we don't even sell those trips because it's just not practical. It's not safe at all as well to do it. But there's some people that purely shop price on Kilimanjaro. I get it. It's expensive. But if you're going halfway around the world, climbing the highest mountain in Africa, spending all this money to fly there, take your time. Get an extra day, 2 days. You'll feel great. You won't have a headache, you know. So most people make it to the top. So yeah. So
how big of a part, because you mentioned that one of the group didn't make it because they were scared. How big do you think is the influence of mentally being prepared and fear in climbing?
Yeah, it's a lot. But what I always try to tell people is Kilimanjaro is beautiful in the sense that it's not like the Himalayas. If you get sick in the Himalayas and stuff, it's like, well, it's 5 days that way, and then there's a plane you can get on, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, we can get to the bottom of Kilimanjaro in a day. There's descent routes that people don't use, the Umbwe route, the Shira route. There's actually a secret road that comes up onto Kilimanjaro between day 3, right around day 3, Shira 2. There's a road. So I always tell people, like, listen, go into it, get 3 or 4 days in, and then tell me if you at the 4th day you can't do it before you get to Lava Tower, you can back out. You can back out as part of that fee that you pay, that permit fee. There's a rescue fee that's included in that fee where they'll come drive up there and get you and then take you back down. So yeah, so there's a big, I always say a million times, I say all the time, it's a huge mental and physical challenge, right? It's mental. It's still mental. You're sleeping outside for 7 nights, right? Half the oxygen that you have at sea level, bunch of people you don't know, right? Going to the bathroom outside, you know, I mean, you kind of mix it in, and in general, it's a little uncomfortable sometimes, but once you do that summit, you come back down, you're elevated. Now, the big issue with the summit night is most people don't sleep the night before, right? So think about this. I'm going to tell you, okay, you need to go to bed at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. We're going to have an early dinner, and I'm going to wake you up at 11:30 and we're going to start hiking. Well, I'm just in there like, still, you know, like I'm thinking about it. So I'm in my mind, is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? And speaking of rain and snow, the worst thing you want on Kilimanjaro is not snow or rain, it's wind. Wind is what wipes you out, right? So you don't sleep the night before, you'd hike to that camp, then you're going to go do 14 hours back down. And the hardest part about Kilimanjaro is the descent, right? It's cold going up, it's hard, but you know what? A 10,000 foot descent after you just hiked 8 hours up, it's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Right. It's the hardest. I mean, in March, we were with a group and this lady. So you come back to the camp you started at, Barafu camp, and you eat and you try to take a nap, and then like, okay, you got 4 more hours. And this lady's like, I'm not going. I'm not going. And I get in the tent and I'm like, you're absolutely going, because we were packing up every physical thing here. And I told you guys this, you have to do the full descent. We have to get below the tree line. You'll feel better. You'll be way warmer. You'll have more oxygen. So yeah, it's a huge mental and physical challenge.
What are some tips that you have for people that want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in terms of how they can prepare?
Yeah. So I always tell people plan like a year in advance. You know, it's good to plan a year in advance. If you plan a year in advance, friends will come, parents will come. It's far enough out. Like if I said, hey, you guys want to go, trekking in Australia 1 year from now? Sure. It sounds great. Right. If you ask me under 6 months, nah, too close. I got things going. So I always tell people plan a year in advance. If you do that, people will show up and join your trip, relatives, friends, people, something like that. So that's one. Second, I always say training starts like 4 months in advance. So 4 months in advance, you should be doing cardio based hiking, walking, running. I always tell people, like, if you don't do that, like if you run a half marathon, 13.1 miles, plan that, put that make that a month before Kilimanjaro, right? Or 2 months before Kilimanjaro, like work toward that. Like, and so there's the training piece. The more you work out and train for the trip, the more you'll enjoy your time up there. Yeah. It's 42 miles, right? It's still 42 miles. It's far, right? So it's still 42 miles, sleeping outside for 7 nights. So, training, planning far enough advance. And then I let other people say, and let me do the work. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's say, for example, there is a group of 5. There's 5 of people that show up to climb Kilimanjaro, and they work with us or work with another company. There's actually about a 35-person support staff for 5 people. So there's you 5 plus 35 other people. So everyone's like, well, why is that? Like, well, what do you mean? I'm from Australia. We carry all of our stuff up there. I've literally had Australians tell me that. I'm like, okay. They say, okay, so when is the last time you've carried 23 meals, right? So on an 8-day trip, it's 23 meals. You're not going to do 23 bags of freeze-dried food. I mean, maybe you are, right? So there's a ton of food that you need to bring, right? We no longer go to the bathroom all over the trails like we used to. That's any respectful trail. Now you have toilets, so we have to bring toilet, right? You have to sit at a table for those meals. We have porters that need to sleep in tents. So there's a lot that goes on. We have porters who just carry eggs for 8 days. Carrying eggs, walking, carrying the eggs. We have guys who just carry tiki maji, which is a watermelon, right? We have people who just carry a bathroom, right? Like to carry a bathroom. So all of those, that 5-person trip, 35 other people. And that's not overstaffing it. It feels like it's overstaffing it, but it's not. It's part of the culture. It pays people a better wage. So a porter wants to climb like 2 times a month, 3 if they're super lucky. That money that they'll make in a month blows away a salary that they would make in any other context. So they like to do it. And so you get people that are really kind of committed to that. So they do that for 7 or 8 months out of the year. Then you have the months that are rainy. So there's a lot that goes into, trekking trips. On the Everest Base Camp trip, which is one of your other maps, I think that you guys have, there's actually toilets at the tea houses, right? So that's easy. So you don't have to bring a toilet. You used to a long time ago, right? And you still can if you want. But the point is you have to carry food on Kilimanjaro. So it takes a lot. So what I always tell people is you leave the planning to me. You show up. We pick you up at the airport. We get you all set up, briefing, go through your gear, go through everything, take you 3 hours to the start of the Lemosho trek, start the trek up, get you back down, send you back. It's still an amazing adventure. You're required by law to take guides anyway on Kilimanjaro. You can't do it like you used to do it anymore. You used to be able to do it different ways, but it supports a big economy and feeds lots of people,
Yeah.
puts lots of kids in school, and increases education of everything. It's yeah, we have 9 full-time guides, about 125 porters, and maybe 75 contract porters that kind of come in and out. But in general, they only work for Embark. Yeah, so it's a huge family.
For sure.
Wow,
Yeah.
yeah.
The same thing holds for the Western Breach if it's more a mountaineering thing.
Like in terms of the gear. Well, yeah.
Orders.
Yeah, same thing.
Same
Yeah,
thing,
yeah, same thing. There's a trick on the trick about the Western Breach is the porters don't have to go to the summit though. Unless you sleep in the crater of Kilimanjaro, they can actually have a really long hike that day, but they bypass and they go through all the other camps and come back and meet you at the end because you're not going to see them for 14 hours. So they can do that hike in 7 or 8 hours. So yeah, but on the Western Breach, yeah. But if you sleep in the crater of Kilimanjaro, which less than 1% of the people do, very, very high. It can be the most amazing thing of your life or the most miserable thing of your life. Yeah, very miserable. In that scenario, you have to take the crater, you have to take the porters, and you have to take the guides. They get kind of like a hazard pay for sleeping up in the crater itself because it's tough to sleep in the crater Kilimanjaro. Yeah.
Done that yourself?
Yes, yeah, and explored the northern glaciers and all that stuff like that. But honestly, I prefer Arrow Camp, which is the highest camp on the Western Breach, or the Rafu Camp, which is, well, one of the higher camps on the Lemosho Route. There's some new camps that are good at getting in there. Another thing that people are starting to like to do is to circle from the northern side of Kilimanjaro all the way around, coming up. We call it the Kilimanjaro Coil. It's a 9-day trip where you start in Rangai, then you circle around the western side of Kilimanjaro. There's not a lot of people over there like there is on the Machame Route. So it's a fun new way to do that. We're doing that for a couple big foundations this coming fall, next fall actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do lots of charity treks for big foundations. So American Cancer Society, Leukemia Lymphoma Society. We did it for one time for Michael J. Fox for Parkinson's, raising money for Parkinson's. So we do lots of these where people are raising money for causes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah.
I can imagine, definitely.
And then, so yeah, you eventually you were at that point that you decided to go back to the States. I guess that wasn't necessarily a very easy decision if you enjoyed being around there so much.
Well, my wife got accepted into grad school at the time. And so it was something that I kind of had to come back and do it, but it actually launched the full-on real career where we were just organizing climbs for people here and there. Then it got back and I was like, okay, we're all in an adventure travel. Here's how we're going to kind of do it. So it forced me, in my late 20s to start to build a business. And then in 2008, we went out on our own. I did it for a while for someone else. In 2008, we went out on our own, and then just started doing trips, and it started small and growing, and then referrals and different things. And now it's what we do every day.
Yes.
Lots of different treks. And the cool thing about what we do and the cool thing about Embark is we get to do new trips, like that. So we're doing new treks to different locations, and we started to do some domestic stuff. And then we get to, like, my wife just got back was getting back from Oaxaca, Mexico, right? Which is the second most southern state in Mexico. I did a Sierra Norte. It's the mountains outside of Oaxaca City, kind of like village trekking in Nepal, doing treks between villages and then coming back. There's so many trails in the world. I mean, they're everywhere. The problem is, and I'm sure you guys have a nice, array of some really different trails. And I'm sure Australians probably do different trails than Americans, and Americans do different trails than British and things like that. But the problem is most people want to do the same trails, right? So I spent 2 years living in Guatemala just the year before last. So I took my family, Carrie and my kids, and we lived in Guatemala during COVID and the year after. Guatemala is great for trekking. I mean, it's got 27 mountains. It's got 3 active volcanoes that are erupting all day. Great for trekking. No one will go there. You know what I mean? I mean, some will, and some Australians, Canadians filter through, but not trekking. You know what I mean? So Americans go to Costa Rica, and stuff, or go to Patagonia or things like that, and that's fine. But I mean, the world is great. And so our vision is we just build cool treks around the world. We have a big following of people. Sometime we'll do a one-off trek in Bhutan. Other times we'll have series of treks where it comes back every year. Yeah. So, so we've done lots of different treks forever and all different parts of the world.
Very
That's
nice.
amazing. Yeah.
Because you also mentioned in the Aconcagua, do you then also do the mountaineering side of things?
So we are doing we've dabbled in mountaineering side of things. So our first one was off the Everest Base Camp route, which is Imja Se, which is Island Peak, which is an entry level mountaineering mountain that it's off from Ding Bochet, off of the Everest Base Camp track. So so we're starting to dabble. Aconcagua is technically a huge mountain that you hike up like Kilimanjaro. I mean, Aconcagua is not. There are no ropes, and I mean, it's mostly a big mountain trekking like Kilimanjaro. It's just 3,000 feet higher.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're dabbling in that, but we're doing different things and different locations, and we're launching our first K2 base camp, which I'm super excited about next June. So we're going to go to Pakistan and trek to K2 base camp, I hope. So, and then the mainstream ones like, the Peru stuff and things like that. There's lots of great trekking in Peru. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any ambitions yourself of reaching the peaks of the highest mountains?
To be honest, no, I don't. And people ask me that from time to time. I'm a high altitude trekker. I like that. I'll go high, I'll sleep, I'll do some high level mountains like Aconcagua and Kilimanjaro, right? Elbrus and things like that. But I don't want to go to the costs and all the kind of pieces of it. High altitude trekking is awesome. It's awesome. You still get bragging rights. You've done really cool things. I'm really big into loop treks. So I like to find a mountain. We have Mount Rainier by my house, obviously a famous mountain in the West Coast of the United States. Hiked all the way around it. Wonderful, wonderful hike called the Wonderland Trek. You can heard of it. 93-mile trek. Awesome. I like circumnavigating mountains more than anything, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a great way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Oh, so many things that I still want to know, but
you know where to find me.
Probably running out of time a bit. So
yeah. Well, you know where to find me. I'm always happy to answer, any questions from you guys, or even questions from, your clients and the people that follow you. Anything about Kilimajaro. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'll answer any question you want to. And we're getting ready to launch a Kilimajaro only website. So right now, our website is Embark Exploration Co. We're an exploration company. .com. We're launching a Kilimajaro only website here in the next few months that just has tons of content and ebooks and things like that. But yeah, feel free to always reach out to me if you guys have any questions.
For sure. And is there any social media where people can follow you as well?
Yeah, same thing. Embark.exploration.co for Instagram, and we're on Facebook, and our YouTube channel is starting to blow up. I think we have about 30 Kilimajaro videos on anything from food to toilets to guides with 300 summits and those kind of things. So yeah, just find us on YouTube, Embark, and we live and breathe Kilimajaro. That's why I originally contacted you.
Yes. Awesome. No, thank you so much. It's been really great talking to you, learning a lot more about hiking Kilimanjaro. It's definitely on our list, which is very long as well.
I'm sure.
That's, I think, indeed one of those iconic ones that will be great to do.
Well, I know that a lot of my clients, everybody wants a Kilimanjaro map, like the demographic of people. I feel like I can sell some for you. I feel like I could because it's so cool. In fact, I wish you could have them in Tanzania because they're great. But anyway, we can talk more about that later. But you guys have a great product. I love it. I'm inspired by a good looking map that's not over the top and crazy with all sorts of trails. That's enough to put in like a picture frame, like the one you have behind you.
Oh,
Awesome.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you.